Hello everyone, welcome to Spot On. I am your host, Kuya Samiat, and I'm glad you're here today again. It's Thursday again, and we're on Spot On to do what we do best, which is to inspire you. Last Thursday, we had on Aremo Gemini, who showed us a different side to creating, which is in Yoruba language, and it was very inspiring. I hope you caught the replay if you were not on yet. Today, we're thrilled to welcome the radiant Joy Ufomadu, who is a storyteller, an author, a singer, and a songwriter. We're bringing her on to Spot On to inspire you. Joy is the creative force behind Chinyere, the children's book series, and her stories spark self-love, imagination, and identity in young readers. Isn't that inspiring already? She was once a dedicated teacher, then she moved to being a published author, and then a recording artist. So from storytelling to wellness, Joy's mission is actually consistent. She intends to craft meaningful content which inspires young readers and uplifts them into being creatives, inspiring one. And while Joy is getting on here, I'd like you to remember to tell your friends and everyone that Spot On is for everybody. Hi, Joy.
Hi.
Welcome. Hi, you look so good.
Thank you. So do you.
How are you doing today?
I am well. How
I
about
hope you're
you?
excited for Spot On, though.
I'm super excited.
Yeah, welcome. So let's start with you telling us a little bit about yourself, like who is Joy behind these books?
Yeah. So I'm Joy Kinyere Ufomadu. I am an author, storyteller, recording artist, as you've mentioned. I worked in education. I still do work in education, but at the university level. I am a person who believes that every other person is creative and that it is a part of my job to bring that out of folks and to inspire in any way that I can.
That is very nice, and that is what Spot On is for too. That is what we're trying to do at the Kidleaks Foundation. So ensure to tell everybody about that too. And you're a creative writer, so obviously there are things that have impacted your journey from when you started. So, what book or story, or maybe even a magazine, impacted you as a child?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time in the library as a child. So in elementary school, I actually became like a library assistant, where whenever I was finished with work, and I would work really hard to get finished quickly, I could go into the library and arrange books and just spend time because books have a certain smell, right? It sounds
Yeah.
funny, but books have a certain, so just like breathing in the air and the energy of books was just amazing for me. It felt like home. And I enjoyed books like Chicka Chicka Boom Boom because of the rhythm, and all of Eric Carle's books because of the amazing technique that he used for illustration. And honestly, so many others. It's really hard to pinpoint just one because books, just opening books and just reading books and being part of book fairs and anything that I could get my hands on was just who I was as a child.
Yeah, you do sound like you actually enjoyed doing all that as a child. Um, and you're a teacher too. So let's talk about your being a teacher and a
Mhm.
recording artist. How does that shape your storytelling?
It absolutely shapes my storytelling. So I started work as a teacher, as a special education teacher, actually. Um, I can't say that it's something that I knew my entire life that I would pursue, but it was one of those things where I was in college, and I found the major at some point, and I thought this would be amazing. Honestly, for personal reasons, I have a brother who's diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, and I saw special education, and I said, I can help my brother.
Yeah.
And I knew that inadvertently I would be helping so many other children. But it really started as that, and I channeled wherever I was years ago when I was working with my little brother, and I said, I'm going to be the teacher and you'll be the student. And we learned songs together and we did arts and crafts together. So that childhood moment kind of came back to me in college. I majored in special education, became a special education teacher, working with students with disabilities and students who did not have disabilities. And just, in that, you had a variety of learning levels, learning styles, children from different backgrounds. And you had to learn a way as a teacher to reach all children.
Yeah.
You had to find ways to keep them interested and engaged. You had to be interested in them and in their development. And from there, I would create like stories. I would create short stories. I would create poems and use them in my lessons. And so it just kind of was like a natural progression from doing that, and even writing as a child, that kind of led to me actually authoring books.
Yeah, that makes sense because teaching is one thing, but actually teaching for a child to understand at
Mhm.
its own level is another thing. And that's really appreciated because you actually thought about those children when you start writing your stories to
Yeah.
work with them. And each child is different. You can't teach one, they will teach the other. So culture,
Mhm.
it's supposedly the way of life, and there's no way you're a storyteller and your cultural background has not had any effect on your storytelling. So how has yours if affected your storytelling?
Yeah, absolutely. So, culture. I was born in the South of the United States, but I'm very much Nigerian. My parents both from Abia State. Um, and storytelling was a part of our lives. We would sit around in our living room and listen to my dad tell us cultural stories. He would say, my dad told me this story. And we would listen to the same story over and over again. But it's just something about the annotations and, there's suspense, but you know what's going to happen. But we just enjoy the suspense of the story. And all of the stories were imaginative, right? And we disconnected with reality and listened to the stories. Um, and it just, again, was like a natural progression to wanting to create your own stories because storytelling was such a huge part. And even outside of, just us kind of sitting down and listening to what folks would call folk tales, telling real stories or stories where my parents actually had the experiences, was just a part of our lives. We would sit around and listen to their life history, and then eventually we would tell our own stories. So that was really a form of communication in my household, and I think it's definitely connected to Nigeria and my Nigerian culture and roots.
Yeah, and it does look like your parents actually brought Nigeria to you because we hear and we see our grandmas and our older people putting us together in circles and like telling us stories. So your parents actually brought the Nigerian culture all the way to wherever you guys are. And that makes a lot of sense because it brings your cultural background, it makes it thrive in you. So we've talked about culture, we've talked about you being a teacher. Let's talk about your book, Chinyere, the series. How
Yes.
did that even happen?
So, I just wrote about my experiences. This was the first sort of installment in the series, and it's just Kinyere. And it was really my life experience. So I was born in and grew up in the state of Alabama in the United States. We lived in a very small city, small but historical city, Selma, Alabama. And I grew up, myself and my siblings, honestly feeling kind of out of the loop, right? So we shared some similarities with our classmates, with our church members and everything, but we knew that we were culturally different. We didn't have the words for it at that time, but we definitely felt that. And folks let us know that, children, sort of have their ways of letting you know, oh, you're a little different from me. And so, just to speak for myself, I kind of internalized that, felt very disconnected from my culture, had the thought that like I can't wait to get married because my name won't be Ufomadu anymore. I'm gonna have an American name. And just wanted to, gave myself a nickname Riri. And I'm like, they're not gonna know. I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna be Riri in school. And they're not gonna know that I'm Nigerian. And so that's really what Chinyere, the book, was actually about, a coming of age story of a preteen getting to middle school. And middle school is sort of where you start to notice your differences. You know, a lot of times in elementary school, people are just playing. You're not thinking about what folks are wearing or what they're eating for lunch. But in middle school, folks start paying attention. And so Chinyere is sort of having that first experience of being teased, which was my true life experience, being teased because of being Nigerian, being teased because of my name and my Nigerian features. And so she's having that experience. And so we get to see her navigate that and go through the ups and downs of, I don't want to be this, to, you know, kind of going through a storytelling moment with her parents and really finding out the origin of her name and who she is. And we see how she ends up sort of transforming with that experience of being teased and realizing that she's culturally different from her peers.
Yeah, and when you're in a space where you feel out of place and
Yes.
you feel culturally different, there's
Mhm.
a need for actual identity. And I think you portrayed that in Chinyere, the
Yes.
series. And I would like to ask you, why was it so important to, hammer on themes like self love and imagination in this book?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it was really important, you know, even in the entire series, because there's Chinyere. I don't have Chinyere's brother with me. And then there's also the last book in the series, Chinyere and the Words That Grow, Grow, Grow. Chinyere's brother talks about disability, autism spectrum disorder, which is another difference. And we can also talk about that as a cultural difference, right? The disability culture and the disability community. But that's about advocacy, that's about family and, you know, sort of, again, our story, our reactions to finding out my brother's diagnosis and how we experience that. And then Chinyere in the Words That Grow, Grow, Grow is about using words, the power of words and your imagination and sort of becoming those words. But I think those things are important because children are important. And you can make so many changes as an adult, hopefully, if you're lucky to be able to do that. But as a child, that's really where you're really building that foundation. And I just thought that it was important to create meaningful stories where children are using their imagination and realizing the importance of imagination and sort of creating their own worlds. And the importance of advocacy. So you may not be a person with a disability, but I'm sure you know somebody, or there's somebody in your community. And understanding communication, right? Books of communication. There are folks with certain disabilities are who communicate differently. So understanding that all forms of communication are important. I think that it was important to embed those themes, but again, make them interesting and make them exciting and work with illustrators who do great work like this that'll make a kid be like, I want to read that.
Yeah, and I can see your book already, and it looks amazing. And from what you've explained
Mhm.
to me, I am interested in your book. And for our viewers who are actually interested in reading and seeing your work, how do they go about that?
Yeah, yeah. So major websites like Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I have a website that's chinye.com, and they can always visit that and buy it direct from the author. Um, Via Google, you'll see a plethora, but a lot of folks are really comfortable with websites like Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And again, you could support directly through Chinye, CHINYAY.com. And my books are there.
Okay. Yeah. So we're going to check it out.
Thank you.
We're going to check it out. So you are an African child, but not
Mhm,
in Africa,
mhm.
and you're creating for African children so that they see themselves in these stories and are
Yeah.
inspired to use their imagination to do stuff, big
Mhm,
things actually. Why do
mhm,
you feel it is so important to create specifically for children of African descent?
mhm. I think because on a global level, there's still a need for more books where children are seeing themselves and seeing their culture. There are what I would say cultural foods in this. So we have um, Tintin and we have moi moi in this book. So where you're saying like this is something I ate yesterday. You see something that you ate, or there's a quete cloth weaving. So you see something that maybe your grandmother did. So I think it's just really important. As kids, I grew up, reading books where I didn't see images that looked like myself, and I still connected. But how much more connected would I be if I could read something where the character looks like me and I feel represented? I think it's also important for children to see themselves in books so that they can be inspired to create themselves. Not every child will want to be a writer, but they may say, oh, a person that looks like me illustrated the book. I want to illustrate, I want to paint. So I think it's just really important for African children to embrace the long history of storytelling that's within our culture, through books, to create their own stories, and to, again, understand the importance of that. I also think for the perspective of other folks who are looking into our window as African storytellers and at African children, it's really important to tell positive stories.
Yeah.
And again, from a global perspective, for them to see that our culture is extremely rich. We are hanging out with our grandmothers. Our families have long traditions of doing things together, and storytelling, and having amazing careers. So I think all of the things that are embedded in this book are important for African children, as well as folks who want to look inside and see who we are.
Yeah. And that's amazing, amazing work that you're doing, trying to ensure representation
Mm-hmm.
in your books. Because people write, a lot of people write, but not everybody thinks about the books resonating
Mm-hmm.
with these specific kinds of people. So we've
Mm-hmm.
heard about your books, you've shown us the books, and it already looks amazing. Would you like to read maybe 3 pages of your
Okay.
book for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Thank
I'll do.
you.
Yes, yes, I will do some of Chinyere and the Words That Grow, Grow, Grow,
Okay.
illustrated by Monique Mortimer, who's actually an illustrator in South Africa. I will go to one of my favorite parts. All right.
Yeah.
So it says, these words will help you shine and bloom, Mama Mary said with a dance. She told me to say the words every day. She said that if I use my imagination, I would soon believe them. And these are the words that she said. I love that I'm full of new ideas. I love my wonderful name. I am brave. I am from a beautiful place. I am full of creativity. I care about myself and others. I think positive and caring thoughts. If I think unhappy thoughts, I always find a happy way to think about things.
Mm.
I am always happy to learn and grow. I have unique and important things to share with the world. I love to give and share. I'm a great friend, and I have great friends. So that was just a little piece of the words that grow.
And that is amazing. Like it's actually giving books that we should read every morning
Yes,
before stepping out.
yes,
Because I'm already telling myself I'm amazing. I
yes,
have a lot of things to share with the world.
yes.
I'm this, I'm that. And I feel like every child should have a copy of this because that makes a lot of sense. It teaches self love. It teaches that you are a person and you should do great things. You can and will do great things, and that is very nice. But we're just saying what we feel like.
Mhm.
I am saying what I feel like I'm taking from your book. What do you hope that children who read your book take from it?
Yeah. So I agree with you. And that's what I always say when I'm sharing this with other folks, whether I'm reading it to children or even sharing it with parents or teachers, is that my hope is that this book will be used for a lifetime. I still sometimes rehearse parts of books that I read as a child. And my hope is that this is a book that won't just go on the shelf, but that a child could pick up and go through some of those affirmations daily, and hopefully feel free to write in it, create your own. That is what my hope is that this becomes an interactive tool, because again, as children are developing who they are and who they want to be. And they may not quite understand the importance of words, but this is an introduction to that, so that they understand when they're an adult, when they're in college, when they're even in high school, that they get to create their lives. They get to create what they think of themselves. Because regardless of if you're culturally different or not, if you're going to high school, if you're going to the workplace, if you're just in life, you'll probably meet at one point a person who has an opinion about you that you don't quite agree with. So I think that this book and books like it can be sort of a barrier between that. You've already sort of come up with who you are. So anything that's against that, you're able to use this as a shield to say, that's not me. I know who I am. I'm from a beautiful place, so I don't know.
Yeah. So children are unfiltered. I think that word works better
Mhm.
because if you go to a school, your child comes home and it's like, somebody said, I'm
Yeah,
different, I look
yeah,
different, my
yeah,
accent is not like theirs.
mhm,
You're just like, okay, take this and read
yeah,
it.
yes,
So your book is like a tool towards self identity,
yes,
and that is very nice.
mhm,
And thank you for this amazing work that you're sharing with the world.
absolutely.
Yeah. So you're writing for kids, and you actually mentioned that you write for your younger self. What do you think your younger self would think about these books you're writing? What do you think she'll say?
Oh my God, my younger self would be in disbelief, but so appreciative, right? Like, again, I've read a lot of books of a lot of different subject matters, and I took all of that in. My younger self will be so happy to take this in. And again, to see characters that look like her and with her name, right? Like, to know that she's represented and she's important. My younger self will be ecstatic. And I think even more confident. And going back to those moments of feeling separate or being teased, my younger self, I think, would have had more of an armor to know that that's not me. I know who I am. So I think my younger self would be overjoyed.
Yeah. I believe your younger self will be very, very proud of you because you're doing amazing work. And since Spot On is all about inspiring others to create, and you're actually using your book to inspire others too, what advice would you give to anyone who wants to create for children?
To create for children, I think exploring that concept of the younger you and the things that you would have wanted to see, or even the things that interested you. And, doing that and then just writing. Like, you can perfect things later, but just writing from your heart. And it could be something inspiring or a story about, animals. Either way, if it's for children, there's going to be a point where there's some hope that's added and some joy, right? So just writing what you feel excited about, and maybe even something that you connected to as a kid, and just doing it. I think a lot of folks, talk about wanting to write books for children, but feel apprehensive about it. So some great advice that I got once is to read. You can go to a library and check out a plethora of books. Read a lot of children's books. Go to the bookstore, buy some that you want to keep on hand, and just get engulfed in children's books. But to be honest, from the point of start, I think just write. And then from there, you can kind of edit and decide the format that you want, but just write what you're feeling, write that inspirational story. I'm pretty sure that kids and children will be so excited to read it. And even parents, like, children's books, they are for children, but parents, teachers, other folks are reading these, and you kind of have to sell them on that before the children get it, because they're the ones with the money, right? So yeah, that's my advice.
Yeah, that's a very amazing advice. And you mentioned something that adults are actually reading these books
Mhm,
even before children read them.
mhm,
Has there been a point where maybe a parent or a child came to you and was like, "Oh, this is what I feel about your book,"
mhm.
and it was like it
Absolutely.
moved you? Can you tell
Absolutely.
us
And that
about
feeling
it?
is like, yeah, it's out of this world. It's an unreal feeling. The book that I don't have today is Chinyera's Brother, and again, it's about finding out that Chinyera's brother has autism and how the family sort of pulls together and learns about it, and we understand that communication comes in many ways. And I was a vendor at an event, and a woman came up and she read the book, and she said that she has autism spectrum disorder, and she was like, I really appreciate the fact that you didn't make Year's brother a victim. You made it very clear that he had a voice, even if he communicated differently. And she was like, there are many books that are about disability that just are sad and make it seem as though it's a bad thing. And she's like, you actually made it look like a good thing. And she purchased the book, and that was the biggest, best review I could have ever gotten in life. So that's one that really sticks out to me, that lives with me.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest reward from writing and creating. So keep doing it because we like to read more of your work.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So we've come to the end of Spot On. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your beautiful art, and your work with us today. And to everyone watching, do check out Chinyere's work and our books on our page and our website. And don't forget to follow our page at the Kid Leads Fest across all platforms. And remember, if you know anyone who should be on Spot On, tell them to go on our website and register to be a guest on Spot On. We don't filter out people. Every creative, your voice should be heard. So until next Thursday,